Hello, welcome to another episode of Forgotten Cemeteries of the Pacific Northwest. Today we're at Mount Hope Cemetery. This cemetery was a recommendation by subscriber 5th Generation Oregonian, so thank you very much. It's quite the drive to get here, but it was a nice drive. This cemetery is located in Salem, Marion County. Alternative names include Waldo Hills, Hunt Family Burying Ground, Warren Cemetery, Luthi Cemetery, Willard Hill Cemetery, and Morris. So let's go meet some of the local residents and hear their story. A little bit of history about the cemetery and interesting little bit of information from subscriber 5th Generation Oregonian. He believes his dad and grandpa possibly built that metal sign we just saw in the beginning of the video back in 1982. So the established date of this cemetery is 1858. The Oregon Burial Site Guide reports 472 burials. That was in 1995, I believe. That number has increased per find a grave to 655 at 91% photographed. When I was doing my little highlight grave research, where I just kind of pick a few people in the cemetery, they're mainly pioneers. There seemed to be a lot of early arrivals in Oregon, as far as like the 1840s mainly. There also appears to be a plethora of stories and important people to the state of Oregon buried here. So I'll do my best not to ramble too much, as there's a lot to cover in this cemetery. I kind of struggled on who to pick and didn't want to make the video like 400 hours long, so I'll do my best. I will say the Geer family is really catching my interest lately, mainly because they had a major impact on Oregon history. And there's a broken cemetery I'm planning on visiting very soon that has like the oldest Geer family members. I think it's going to be a really good one. A lot of history in that one. So let's go meet some people and look at some stories. I'm just gonna apologize ahead of time. It is freezing out here. It was nice and like 60 something up in Beaverton. The sun was out and I drove down here to Salem and it's down to like 50. It's a little rainy, so I'm cold, so apologies if my voice is shaky. We're at the Colby plot. It's way in the back. Mary, the mother, is all the way on the right over here. This is the father, and this is Alan right here, just so you can keep up. Mary was born in 1806. It's unknown, but my money is on New Hampshire based on the record. Elias F.M. Colby, born in 1811 in Sullivan County, New Hampshire, is the father right here. They got married in 1841 in Coos County, New Hampshire, which is home to Omni Mount Washington Resort. Just became interested in a town that popped up. It kind of looks like something from the Shining movie, in my opinion. But based on the records, they would migrate to Oregon in 1850. It looks like they had one son, Alan J. Colby, born in 1848. However, he died at the age of 7 in 1856. The reason I picked this plot was it made me think of what Ken told me at Lewis Pioneer Cemetery, the groundskeeper there. He was a really cool guy. Just could tell he was like an open book of information. He was very nice. But I'll never forget my talk with him. And he recalled a question someone asked an old-time pioneer back in the days. I don't know if he read a book or saw it in an article, but they asked her, what were your goals in life? What were your dreams? And the woman simply replied, to survive. And that's one of the things you come across these cemeteries is you come across this couple like we have on the right, and then they just have children that die very young, unfortunately, and very high death rate back then. Oh my god, the sun came out for like 2 seconds. Alright, so we have King Henry Lemuel Hibbard. He was born in Buffalo, New York in 1806, and no, he's not royalty of any kind from my understanding. We do see Nancy here listed as his wife, but King Henry was first married to a woman named Phoebe Twig in 1826. Couldn't find anything about her or where she remains. But Henry would marry Nancy in 1835. Hibbard would leave Pekin, Illinois, April 7th, 1847, with his wife Nancy M. Craig Brispin Hibbard and their children. Looks like they had about 4 children at the time. Nancy was supposed to meet up with their siblings and father, who already are on the way to Oregon. However, Nancy's father would die along the Oregon Trail, unfortunately. Back to King and his crew's journey, they would take the northwest route, first crossing the Missouri River at St. Joseph. He would then travel the Platte River path. I think we talked about this a little bit, but so the Platte River is a river of Nebraska that's 310 miles long. If you've ever driven through Nebraska, it feels like forever, FYI. This river was huge in providing western expansion migration routes for not only the Oregon Trail, but the Mormon and Bosman trails. The Mormon Trail was a route used by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from Illinois to Utah back in the day. I guess it was about a 3-month travel from my understanding. The trail was started in 1846 by none other than Brigham Young. Speaking of BYU, did you guys know Steve Young went to BYU? I didn't know that. I was looking up the origins of it, and Steve Young's picture popped up, quarterback, San Francisco. If you ever heard of the Bosman Trail, it was basically a gold rush that connected southern Montana to the Oregon Trail in Wyoming. Going back to the Platte River, this was from the Oregon California Trails Association's website. The Platte River itself was another major obstacle, as in June it consisted mostly of shallow, stagnant pools separated by mud flaps, sandbars, and 3-foot deep main channels that meandered from bank to bank. It was too wide to be bridged and too shallow for a ferry. Crossing the Platte from the Northern Council Bluffs Road, the Mormon Trail, to the Oregon Trail on the Platte's south shore required a risky track following a path of willow poles set out to mark the stable sandbars that would support the weight of the wagon. So that must have been fun. You're trusting these poles to cross the river with the hopes of not snapping your wheel off. So back to the Hibbards. I'm not sure if this is from the journal, but the write-up that I found on the Hibbard family had a little journal entry that said something about they saw thousands of buffalo upon the plains and just as many Indians. At one point, Native Americans stole their horses, so that must have been lovely. They would eventually arrive in the Cascades September 17th, 1847. King Henry would take a donation land claim in Waldo Hills, Oregon, basically East Salem. All right, here we have Trenton R. Hibbard, born in 1836 in Tazewell County, Illinois. He is the son of King Henry and Nancy we just talked about. Trenton, at the age of 12, would be asked to drive one of the ox teams at times on the Oregon Trail. During his youth, he was a student under Judge Orange Jacobs. Orange was a lawyer, a newspaper publisher, and a politician. His career was more focused on the Washington Territory, and at one time he was the mayor of Seattle. So Trenton was in good hands of having a mentor of some sorts. Trenton must have listened well. He left his farm in 1875 and started up his own business in Silverton, Oregon. His business was very successful. I couldn't find out exactly what business he was in. That was one of the things I was missing from the article, unfortunately. Trenton was also one of the first members of the Odd Fellows Lodge in Oregon. He would die in 1910 at the age of 74. If you look at the top, there's some symbolism there, and you should be able to identify that by now, I would hope. Here we have Corporal Harry Glenn Hibbard, born in 1874 in Marion County, Oregon. As you can see here, he served in Company K, 2nd Oregon Volunteer Infantry, which fought in the Spanish-American War of 1898. As a whole, the 2nd Oregon Volunteer Infantry size was about 50 officers and 970 enlistments. Their engagements include the capture of Guam, Battle of Manila, and the Second Battle of Caloocan. I hope I'm saying that right. Caloocan? It's a tough one. More specifically, the capture of Guam was a bloodless battle, actually. The U.S. sent in a single cruiser, the USS Charleston, to capture Guam, who was under Spanish control during this time. Apparently, the Spanish garrison on the island had zero knowledge of the war. The USA just kind of showed up and said, "This is ours." And the Spanish garrison, taken off guard and having no preparation, just surrendered. So I'm guessing Harry fought in the Battle of Manila because it says he got typhoid fever on Manila and died December 9th, 1899. So let's learn about typhoid fever. It comes from contaminated water or food from the feces of a person. I believe salmonella is the main cause. The first week, your body temperature rises, you have fever fluctuations, headaches, cough, and pain. To add to this, your nose just starts bleeding and you have abdominal pain. You also have a decrease in white blood cells, you know, like the body's defense. By the second week, you have 104 fever, rattling breathing from the lungs, rose spots, spleen and liver enlarge, and the liver acts up. By week 3, it's ball game pretty much. You have internal hemorrhaging, intestinal perforation, brain inflammation. The fever continues, causing dehydration. So chlorinate your water. Harry's body was shipped home, and his old comrades would give him a military-style funeral. Harry was only 25 when he died. And here is John Shotwell Downing. There's several Downings here, and it's quite a massive family overall. However, the only info I could find on the Downings was that they came to Oregon in 1852, and for such a huge family, there's limited info so far. I think a Shotwell shows up later in my notes. I'll have to find that individual. There was another Downing named George Sylvester Downing that came in 1853, but he's buried at Mount Cressy Abbey Museum. Apparently he was a lawyer. All right, probably one of the more prominent people in this cemetery is Ralph C Geer. There's a lot of good things he did for the state of Oregon. So he was born in 1816 in Wilmanic, Windham County, Connecticut. FYI, if you visit this town, check out the Frog Bridge for me. Sometimes you look these towns up just to, you know, kind of get a feel of where they're from, and that picture popped up. I'll put it in the video, but it's a bridge with a bunch of frog statues on it. His family would move to Madison County, located in Ohio. There, at the age of 21 in 1837, he would marry a woman named Mary Willard. She does share a headstone with Ralph. She's on the back, and I'll try to bring the camera over to that side at the end of this little talk. Ralph's family would cross the plains in 1847, putting them as one of the earliest pioneers to arrive here. The Geer party did travel with the famous General Palmer during their migration, but I think we'll save that story for another time. That's an interesting one. He and Mary would settle in Waldo Hills. It looks like they had 5 children together. His write-up states that during the early history of Oregon, Ralph was a prominent citizen taking part in politics. At first he was a Democrat, but would switch to Republican and actually be voted in 1859 and elected to the legislature as a representative from Marion County. He was elected as a county clerk to Marion County in 1870. Ralph was a teacher and taught at the first school established in Marion County in Waldo Hills. He wouldn't stop there, though, as he also served on the commission for the Southern Pacific Railroad, and he helped organize the first Marion County Fair in 1854. Ralph planted apple seeds and pear seeds on the second donation land claim registered in Waldo Hills. He's also recognized as having established the fruit industry in Oregon with a man named John Lewingland. I read from a paper that Ralph Geer's fruit farm produced 42 apple, 15 pear, 6 cherry, and 5 peach varieties. Ralph would be hit with paralysis in the last year of his life, unfortunately. His wife is located on the other side. There's Mary. Her obituary states that Mary Catherine took her last breath at 7 o'clock, surrounded by her children, June 11th, 1898. Here we have LeGrand Byington Geer, another Geer. He was born in 1845. He's a little late, but he played an important role during his time in Oregon. He would come to Oregon in 1847 with his parents. He was actually a former land agent of Oregon. What does a land agent exactly do? I didn't know either. I had to look it up. So a simple definition I found says, conduct a broad range of real estate transactions related to state islands. Transactions include the development and execution of authorizations to use state land, such as construction authorizations, leases, licenses, easements, and permits. So, yeah, you learned all about land agents today. Alright, I talk about this person a lot during the tour, so apologies. I found her during the tour, so I figured I add her to the video early on. So we have Ralph C Geer. Not our normal pioneer individual, but definitely worth noting. Musa was born in 1872. Not a whole lot about her youth, but she did graduate from Wilmette University in 1895 and taught in Salem for about 9 years. In 1904, she moved to New York City and was employed by a leading advertising magazine, and also did some modeling for the Ford and Taylor Company. In 1910, she came back home to us in the Pacific Northwest and took a homestead claim in Waldo Hills area of Washington near Goldendale. She also served as an advisor and an unofficial interpreter of the nearby Rock Creek Indians. She would also return to Salem in 1961, living shortly on a farm but living her days in a nursing home. So the Rock Creek people of Camellia, a Tenino subtribe, perhaps another Yakima name for Umatilla, that was a tough one to say, which were known as the Rock Creek Indians. The obituary reads that Miss Geer was well known herself and had a colorful lifetime. She did a variety of things, including teaching school, working with the Indians in Goldendale, Washington area. Apparently her brother, Arch Anson Geer, started a museum at the Geer farm at one time. I'm not sure if that's still standing or visitable. From what I read, it is known as the Geer Crest Farm now, and it's Ralph Geer's fruit farm. So that farm is actually still active from my understanding. Here's John Abrams Hunt, born in 1836 in Liberty, Indiana. He would cross the plains via ox team in 1847 with his family at the age of 11. It looks like there's several hunts that came that year. I counted about 8 on the pioneer list that I have. His father was involved in the hotel business, and as he grew up, he would move to Southern Oregon in 1877 to Douglas County. He did go to California during the gold rush. While living in Douglas County, he was elected state senator as a Republican in 1882 and wanted to serve the whole state instead of a special section. I don't know if he ever got that chance. John would be remembered as a wise counselor and an honest man. His wife, Marion Hunt, is also buried here, right next to him. And here we have James Robert Thomas. He was born in 1836 in Illinois. James would serve in the 115th Illinois Infantry Company D, actually, so he is a Civil War vet. Looking at his picture, I'll try to put it in the video. Looks like an intimidated dude. He looked like he'd kick your ass, man. The 115th Illinois Infantry has 16 battles listed as engagements, so they're pretty busy infantry. More notable battles include the Battle of Nashville, which was one of the largest victories for the Union side during the Civil War, and the Battle of Chickamauga, which was the first major battle of the war. It resulted in a Confederate victory and had the second highest number of casualties next to the Gettysburg War, apparently. James was also a member of GAR. He would die in 1909 at the age of 73. His wife, Rachel Ellen Klein, is buried at Thorpe Cemetery in the state of Washington. So here's Reverend Silas Williams. He was originally a Missourian and made his way to Oregon in 1852. His obituary says he was a resident of Oregon for 67 years at the time of his death and spent the majority of his time at his farm. He also served in the Rouge River Indian War in 1856. Given the title, you can guess what the war involved: the settlers versus Indians. The people of the Rouge River had a reputation for being very violent toward non-Indians. And being this area was traveled through on the way to California during the gold rush, there was a call to arms in Oregon. From what I read, conflicts were an issue since like the 1830s, so tensions were probably building up over decades over this. The Battle of Bloody Springs was the largest battle of the Rouge River Indian War. On Halloween 1855, Native Americans were camped on top of a hill with their families, with soldiers located across a narrow ravine. Somehow, 200 Native Americans, armed with only bows, arrows, and muzzle loaders, held off more than 300 soldiers in the battle. The battle would actually result in a victory for the Native Americans. However, the war would be won by the United States, and over 20 tribes would be relocated onto reservations, from my understanding. Back to Silas. He would serve as a pastor for 42 years. His wife, Sarah, is on the headstone as well. She died at only 32 years old, apparently. I couldn't find a reason for it. He would remarry a woman named Nancy Daniel Williams, but she's buried at Palestine Cemetery in Benton County. There's also like a little headstone or something on top of Silas's grave. They must have broken over at one point and someone just set it there. Here we have George Palgrave Smith Riches. He's also listed as Palgrave Smith in the records. He was born in 1821 in England. So George's story begins when he arrived in the USA with his parents in 1830. Couldn't find their exact landing spot though. No parental info as well. So apologies, I would have been interested to know their little backstory. However, George would travel the plains in 1847 and arrive in Oregon City. He was in the shipbuilding business. In 1851, he took a donation land claim. And the same year, he would marry a woman named Mary Shotwell Hunt. We talked about Shotwell before. However, Mary would die at only 26 years old in 1851, making their marriage short, like months apparently. Couldn't find the cause of death. No find a grave picture as well on her headstone. I am seeing something called Section A, Lot 30 on a map I found of this cemetery, so I'll try to locate that. George moves fast. He would marry Mary Jane Watkins in 1852, a year later. George would die in 1891 to the dreaded disease La Grippe. You know La Grippe these days as the flu. Alright, here's Mary Jane Watkins Riches. I hope you could see her headstone. It's pretty wore down. There's a lot of lichens and kind of moss growing on it as well. It's very windy, so apologies if the camera shakes a little bit as well. But Mary Jane's Oregon Trail story is filled with sorrow. She is the second wife of George we just talked about. She was born in 1835 in something called Decatur County, Indiana. But then another record says Clarksburg, Indiana. Early in 1852, her family would make the move to Oregon. This trip would be pretty brutal on Mary Jane. Her parents both contracted cholera and died within hours on the Oregon Trail. The wagon train would reach Independence Rock, and she would marry a man named Calvin Walker July 4th, 1852. However, tragedy would hit again as Calvin died shortly after, contracted mountain fever. The only info we have on Calvin is that he's buried somewhere close to west of Mount Hood, Foster's Place, Oregon. When I looked it up, I think it says something about Foster's Farm, and I think you could visit that area. Thankfully, Mary had her 4 brothers with her during the trip, so she wasn't fully alone. Another interesting story I read was there was a list of John W. Watkins as one of the names carved at Names Hill, Wyoming, July 7th, 1852. If you're not familiar with the story, Names Hill is a site along the Oregon-California Trail where immigrants would carve their name into the soft limestone site after crossing the Green River. This website also listed John W. Watkins as part of the Wapello wagon train. Couldn't find any info on John Watkins anywhere, and I don't know if he's related to Mary Jane, so who knows if he was. But back to Mary, she would first settle in Sublimity, Oregon, then she would marry George and live out her days. She was an active member of the Christian church as well. And hidden in the bushes here is John Pryor Humphreys, and his wife is on the other side of the headstone, Margaret Clementine Wilson Humphreys. John was born in Tennessee, and pretty much everything you need to know will be on a picture I put up in the video. There was a very short obituary. He does share a headstone with his wife right there, Margaret, hid in the bushes here. Her write-up said she was best remembered for her pipe smoking and the fact that she had no teeth. You come out here, there's the bush. So here we have Lewis Cunningham Griffith, born in 1829 in Kentucky. Definitely one of the most massive headstones I've seen as far as girth, if you will. I'll have to take the camera out and pan it, but I don't know how they moved it out here. It's solid too. It looks like it would take like a forklift to move this thing. His obituary says he held the highest reputation in Marion County at the time of his death. Lewis would run a meat market with his partner. It didn't say a specific city, but I'm guessing Maclay, Oregon, based on the obituary. Basically eastern Salem. And Maclay, Oregon actually led me to another cemetery, something called Stipp Memorial Cemetery, which I might check out one day. It has an early establishment date too, of like 1849, so it sounds like a good one. Lewis would actually be a Democratic nominee at one point for representative in the state legislature. Oh my God, it's the sun. Towards the end of his life, Lewis would end up in a wheelchair due to a serious accident, and I couldn't find out what that was specifically, unfortunately, but his wife, Susan, let's go over to her. You can see it's a pretty beefy headstone. And Susan's over here. She would come with her family to Oregon in 1852 from Missouri, where she was born. She was also classified as one of the most respected pioneer women in the state. Her father, John Mulkey Savage, is buried at the Stitt Memorial Center as well. So he has a pretty interesting story, so I'll save that for another time. All right, it's time for a little mini tour. There's the sign for Mount Hope Pioneer Cemetery, established in 1849. A little out in the country. It's off a gravel path you could see here. Very quiet as well out here, besides me talking and ruining it. I believe they refer to this area as Waldo Hills or something along those lines. Feel free to correct me, but thank you for the recommendation, by the way, as well. I might as well thank that subscriber. That was really cool of you. This was a fun cemetery to research, and seems to have a lot of important people in history overall. Limbeck. Actually, they look more in 1848, so mid 1800s. Just like the last name, Limbeck. It's a neat one. There's quite a bit of them. Gilham, late 1800s, and may be one of the more interesting headstones we've seen. Check that guy out. 1869 and 1859. Must be husband and wife. This is neat, interesting design. I am looking for a woman named Musa Geer, that famous last name Geer. She has a pretty cool story, so we'll try to find her during our tour. Ooh. This one needs a little bit of bleach cleaning. All those lichens and algae forming on it. This is Patton. And I've seen that name as well up in Washington County quite a bit. There's a whole cemetery up there of Pattons. And I've been trying to figure out how to park there, because I think it's like right next to a golf course and you have to go in and ask them if you could park, and apparently they're pretty cool about it. Waldo Hills, there it is. Another Downing, pretty popular last name here. Jackson. What's this one? Egan. Never seen that design before. Gigantic Anderson headstone. Figure we'll just do like a switchback tour, maybe. Might be the easiest. And this looks to be the Darby's plot. I did remember seeing that last name. And there is a, get that out of the way, World War I vet, U.S. Army. do see the last name Meyer a lot in Oregon, and I've seen that name several times, but no history to date that I could find, like when they arrived and such, or if there's any pioneers. This is the Thompson's plot right there. Right in front of them is Hirsch. It's like early 1900s they were born, but '40s. Here. We talked about the Humphreys, kind of hidden in that bush area. Very eerily quiet cemetery overall. There's like a wind chime in the background. I'm sure you can hear that. I think there's a few wind chimes. Makes it a little creepy, but it's alright. I can't read this one, but looks like Pooler to me. Looks like it snapped at one time in the center, but somebody repaired it, so that's nice to see. Oh, it is Pooler, because there is a Lewis C. Pooler here. Fairly big monument too, and it looks like somebody's jammed in the bushes over there. Adeline Pooler, 1842. That tree is really working into that side of that headstone. Like this one got a plate put on here, so let's look here. Looks like little Estelle, daughter of R.H. and E.B. Stedman. Oh, infant, 5 months old. Yeah, it's a sad one. It's so bad when you see the infants' graves, because there's usually a lot of them in these older cemeteries. Just going back to that story with Ken, their biggest goal was just to survive back then. It wasn't anything like becoming a huge YouTube star with your cemetery channel. Somebody's hidden here. Looks like Catherine Pooler, 1872 she was born. And again, that tree's trying to be a hog and push everyone out of the way. Let's see what we got here. Robert McAllister, World War II, 307 infantry. Reminds me of that movie Home Alone. Kevin McAllister. This one I can't really make out. Maybe it looks better on the camera. I know I say that a lot, but oh well. Here is the Humphreys plot. Check this out. Got David Becken. Pretty cool pictures on there. We will always remember our little goat. What's that say? Herding beekeeper with love and admiration. Remember the trees, remember the grass, remember me, the pain in the ass. That sounds like a really cool guy. You can see there's little goat dolls there. So he died 2019. It's one of the best things you find in these cemeteries is that sometimes the little sayings on the headstones. We have Marvin L. Becken. He looks like he was in the Korea War. Yeah, this will be the Becken's plot. And then we have another war vet, Air Force. Remember me, the pain in the ass. We have up front and center. Really no. Oh, there it is. On the, I don't want to move their memorial flowers, but it looks like Thompson. One of them has a little scenery of a buck there with this guy fishing, and on the other side looks like there's some musical notes maybe coming from the church on the right. So must have been really involved with the church. If you're not an idiot, you just go on the other side and then you can find out who they are. So this is Thompson. Yeah, mother and father buried together, I'm guessing. We have Davis up here, born in 1898. Landon Thomas. Looks like a young death. Football and memorials on this one. I don't know what these are. Maybe someone out there knows what that is. Looks like I got a solar powered little guy there too. Interesting to visit at night. Alexander Kunzai. Vets here. Maybe, I don't know. Usually when I see that kind of box design, I instantaneously think war vets. But SM3 USNR, maybe someone out there could translate that. I'm not sure what that stands for. Another one. Seems like the newest individuals are buried up front and then the pioneers are in the back. Here's a Jensen with what appears to be a verse on the back. Pretty cool eagle on the right. I did hear an eagle squawking in the trees over there. I hope it doesn't decide to swoop down, tear me up. Some interesting headstone designs here. Sorry if I'm going too slow. It's just I see something and I want to see what it is. Oh, here's a badass one. It's a unicorn. I have not seen a unicorn yet. That's neat. Oh, there's also a little unicorn doll there, or statue. Here's another one with a horse on it. Large. U.S. Army vet. And another large. Says the cemetery is open dusk to dawn. There's no gate or anything. There is plenty of parking. It has like one of those little one-way in, one-way out type of roads over there in the center of the cemetery. But not busy. As you can see, we could have the whole place to ourselves. Then again, I do come early. It's about 9:30 right now. We have Clennon Jr., Air Command, SOAF Vietnam. I'm assuming AF stands for Air Force. Hatfield. Interesting little statue there. So far, a lot of war vets. And our Civil War vet that we talked about earlier in the video. Another Bible verse one. Harvey Swingsoff. Check out one over there. There's a bunch of statues and little memorials. Must be someone popular, because I think they have the most memorials out of everyone in the cemetery. Looks like we have seashells, little statues. There's a little turtle dove maybe, or birds. McAllister. What's with all the Home Alone references I'm seeing? I swear, isn't that what the guy says? 2 turtle doves from the tree? I think it was Home Alone 2. And coincidentally, the person's last name is McAllister. It is Norman McAllister, who looks like he was a log driver. We've seen this before. The semi-truck with the logs on the back. Next to him is Ray McAllister, the Pony Ride Man. 2003. I don't think we visited this little area yet, and then we'll go, I guess what you'd say is the east side of the cemetery. This would be the west side of the cemetery. Got this road dividing it. Similar? I don't know what that's representing on the side. Just glass bottles with a stick. But if it means something to the family, that's cool. All memorials come in different sizes and shapes, don't they? So John H. Semerall, born in 1825, died in 1891. It's a unique headstone, actually. It's got more verses. Very religious cemetery so far, I'd say. And there is a little wind chime here that's been going the whole time, and as you can see, it's made out of forks and spoons and knives. Looks like we have a little garden hose nozzle, so, and a can opener. The birdhouse, but I don't hear any bird. Well, actually, there is stuffing in there, so somebody's making a home there. Riches right there. George and his wife's journey. big steel plate I wanted to check out. It's an interesting first name. I don't, Suan, I guess you could say that was. I don't know if it's all one word or just supposed to be a little space. A monster of a plate. I wonder if that's like stainless steel 3/16 or something. There's not a speck of rust on that thing. It's car 9, Vietnam. It's Donald Earl Ray, in the U.S. Army as well. And there's our first Persian Gulf Corvette. We haven't seen that yet. Don't believe we have. World War II. Jeez. There's the U.S. Navy with little red beads or little jewels all over the headstone. Sorry, I'm trying to look around, see if anything pops out. This one certainly did. It's got David Webb, 1983 to 2012. He was young. He's got his own little plot here. And there's Kunzai, I think that's how you say that. That's a Kunzi? Interesting last name. I've seen that one a lot here. And there's Riches. If there's some type of relation to the ones we talked about earlier. Hoffer's here. I wonder what this is. Oh, it's a chief of police. So we have our first police officers memorial headstones. So, man, a lot of firsts here. So we have an angel over here in the corner, just randomly placed. I don't see any writing or anything, but someone just placed it there. Oh, is that wind cold? Oh my god. Yeah, check out Jackson Matthew Megan? Yeah, he's only 2 when he died, but look at all those little RC cars and everything. Let's read some of these little stones. In a world full of fish, be a shark. Nice, Jackson. Let's see, where are my sunshine? It is so cold. That wind is ripping through me, so apologies if you can't hear me on the camera. And yeah, Cindy here with a pile of rocks in front of her headstone. Looks to be some type of war vet memorial as well, and I'm just not familiar with these markings. Maybe someone out there knows. But Robert Brian Thomas Robinson, looks like he was young and died in 1997. Oh, wow, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah, still young. Oh, there we go. Just got to look behind it. U.S. Marine Corps, Vietnam. Lee again, the little fishing guy, and Nancy Pro way in the back by herself. Oh, well, sun's coming out and we're A little over halfway through the cemetery. I guarantee it'll come out as soon as I get in my truck though. We have Meyer here. Must have been a musician. Got a piano and a trumpet there. Oh, here's a very, very elaborate one right here. Ruby Nell Hardy. And again with the Bible verses, very heavy into this cemetery. And we can see we have some really beat up ones that time is sort of engulfing. A lot of lichens on these cemetery ones, headstones. Kissling was a name I came across. I did not see any information on them though during my research. They do have that classic like big headstone showing off like this is our plot, this is our marker. And we saw that with the hunts. They had that way over there in the back, if you can see Hunt. Still keeping my eyes open for Musa Geer. Not seen her yet. Maybe I did and I just wasn't paying attention. There's so much to look at actually in this cemetery. I didn't expect that, to see so much character, I guess you could say. Usually when you go to the older ones, your pretty standard headstone, but out here the newer ones are very elaborate and just fun to read. We got the Jones in the back. This is what I was talking about. These guys are all seem, oh, there's some mid 1800s over there. This is usually what you see with the pioneer ones. We talked about Silas over here, Williams. As I said, there was this little mini headstone there. It has no writing on it. I flipped it over, but it didn't say anything. This appears to be the Keene's plot, K-E-A-N-E, Tyne. So here's an older one. I recognize it because a lot of the pioneer ones have this little handshake here, and I meant to look up what that is exactly, what that stands for, or maybe some type of religious thing, but looks like Willard, born in 1827, I'm seeing with my eyes, and the bottom, I think 1851 is when they died. This one looks like it split at one time, but somebody repaired it. Yeah. So it appears that this cemetery is well taken care of. It's just, it happens to be in the middle of nowhere. That's the only thing I could say. It's pretty clean. Seems to be a lot of dedication by local people to keep their family members' headstones in pretty good shape. Town, I think that last name is. Opening up to farmland here. This is a nice view. Very quiet out here. center. Pretty recent, 2005, 7. This is a nice one. Hayden with Jesus Christ in the center. Might be one of the longest tours I've done, so apologies, but there's been some fun headstones to show. Sprague, looks like US Army. They got a pretty big plot there. Miller right in front of us. There's a little race car on the right. More war vets, Vietnam and World War II Korea. Did see this one, very interesting. It's got the book on top. I think we saw that maybe at Gleason Cemetery. It looks like Heaven's Gate maybe opening for I.N. Miller, born in 1828, died in 1873. Looks like his wife is buried with him as well. Sarah, cannot make out that. Maybe you guys can. There's a little plot over here I wanted to see what this was. It's got some flowers growing all around it. Bushes, if you will. This looks like, oh, this is Hunt. Family we talked about earlier a little bit. Mary C, daughter of G.R. M.S. Britches. Oh, that must be George, what we talked about earlier, maybe. Not really sure, we'll have to look back on our notes. A little smaller guy over here. Who's this? Elizabeth. Oh, Hunt. Another Hunt. Very striking headstone there from Kunzai again. Must be a very popular family in this area. Here's something that's nice. Pioneer of 1847. I can get out of the shot. Sorry. Which is Hunt. And I think we have one more area just to run through. There's the Hibbards on the right. King Henry. Here's the Geers plot talked about, but no Musa. Have not seen her yet. Talk about Griffith. And there's somebody over here. It looks like a pioneer headstone. Completely missed this one. Eva C, wife of Frickley Jr. Died in 1879. 20. Wow, only 20 years old. warriors. Ah, there she is. Musa. I will incorporate her into the video in a little bit here. I'll have to stop and take my notes. But we are approaching the end of the tour. Kudos to you if you made it this far, actually, because I know I'm not the most exciting person to listen to. I can't tell that. Frederick T. Ott? O-T-T? Yeah, I think that might be it. Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. There was a lot of history in this cemetery. Thank you again for the recommendation from the subscriber, 5th generation Oregonian. Get a nice shot. Feel free to visit this cemetery. It was a good one. So have a great day and stay safe. Look at that. Leaving at 10 o'clock. Plenty of sun. Ironic.